Dear Abby, we've never met before, so this may seem a bit odd, but I feel it's necessary. My name's Jay, for starters. I work the checkout line at the grocery store up on 76th Street. You know the one, with the parking lot that's way too big for the store itself. Yeah, that's the one. I'm 24, fairly tall, and have a rather scraggly appearance. You probably wouldn't recognize me if I came up to talk to you. I don't have a very memorable face. I don't really know why I'm telling you this, to be honest, but that's not the point of me writing. I was working late at night yesterday. It was a very average day for the most part. Nothing too exciting happened, but you'd be surprised how interesting this job can be sometimes. I had been reading some books. The guy that had worked the counter before me left, and it was a really crappy murder mystery, chock full of cliches. Incredibly boring, if you ask me, but it's something to do, I guess. When you showed up, though, my whole night changed. I don't know exactly what it was about you that caught my attention, but as soon as I saw you, I got this odd feeling, a weird mix between excitement and terror. That's the best way I can describe it, at least. I saw you walk into my line, and I quickly composed myself. I'd been slouching down in my chair for a while, since I rarely even got anyone in my line. It was only when you got closer that I realized what about you had caught my attention. You were absolutely beautiful. You walked up and said, "Hey," and handed me your cart. I could tell by the way you were talking and the way you were looking that you were pretty sleep-deprived, though this wasn't surprising, considering how late it was. After a second or two of awkward silence, I realized that you'd greeted me. I suddenly forced out a hi in response. I cursed myself out mentally for that one. I sat there for a second, trying to focus. What's your name?" I said. It's only later I realized how odd this must have seemed. What kind of grocery bag guy asks what someone's name is? I'm glad I did, though. I remember you said your name was Abigail, but that you go by Abby for short. Abby. It seemed to fit you perfectly. The name seemed to roll off my tongue as I said it back to myself silently. It was like sweet honey. It just felt good as I said it. You seemed to be perplexed when I looked back at you, and I wondered if I'd done something to upset you. "Shouldn't you be packaging those?" you said, and pointed to my groceries. Suddenly, shocked and embarrassed, I looked up and apologized, then clumsily started shoving groceries into bags as fast as I could. I couldn't believe myself. How stupid could I be? But when I looked up, I realized you were laughing. "You're kind of cute," you said. I tried to play it cool, but I was definitely thrilled. A girl like this thought I was cute. You are too," I said, as I hastily packed the rest of the groceries. As you walked out, you turned towards me as you reached the door and said, "Well, have a good night." I'm guessing I looked pretty stupid writing all this down. You probably still remember it. I mean, it just happened yesterday, but I went home ecstatic that night, and with all the confidence in the world. I feel like it's almost unreal writing it back here. Anyways, I wanted to write you this letter, Abby, to tell you that I love you. I don't know what it was that I felt last night. It was some mix of emotions, but all I know was that even in that small little transaction we had, I felt as if there was something between us. Please write me back soon. Sincerely, Jay. Dear Abby, it's been a week since I sent my last letter, and I still haven't gotten a response, but that doesn't matter. How have you been? My life's been just as normal as usual. Get up, go to work, go to bed. I live in a pretty shitty apartment, but I guess that's what you get when you work as a grocery store bagger. I've thought about you a lot lately, and sometimes I wonder if you remember me. I saw you again today at work. This time it was at a more reasonable hour, thankfully. I didn't want to bother you to see if you would approach me on your own. You came to my line again, which made me absolutely thrilled. This time I was less nervous. I was gonna act normal, no matter what you did or said. I wasn't gonna let a girl like you slip through my fingers. As you walked up, you muttered something that was too quiet for me to make out, and waited at the end of the counter for me to finish packing your groceries. This, obviously, wasn't what I was expecting, but it wasn't all bad. You didn't seem to feel anything at all, actually. I was expecting you to either come up and talk to me or avoid me like the plague. Instead, you just walked on through, as if I was another stranger. This makes me wonder if you got my last letter. You should check your mailbox more often. There was one moment where I felt something, though. I looked over briefly to see what you were doing, and at the same time, you seemed to look up at me to see how far along I was. Right then, our eyes locked. It was only for a second or two, but in those 2 seconds, I saw so much more in you than I had the last time. I felt as if I'd known you for years, but I knew all of your intricate feelings and emotions. Did you feel anything like that with me? Shortly after I'd finished packing your bags, you paid and walked out. Obviously, this was a pretty normal process for me, considering I do it about 50 times every day, but I'd been determined since the night I wrote you that letter that the next time I saw you, I was going to get more of it. I kind of screwed that up. I wasn't satisfied with it. I had to have more. There's a little room in the very back left corner of the grocery store, designated for staff. In there, though, I knew they kept all the security footage from the day. All staff are informed of this and the security camera locations when they're hired. Luckily for me, there's one positioned right next to the counter. I waited until the store closed and everybody had left, then I went in. After flipping through a few of the TV screens, I found the one that was connected to the camera by my counter. I rewound it until about when I remembered you coming in. After a few minutes of scanning, I found it. There you were. I paused on the best still shot I could find. I knew the camera wouldn't do you justice, but it was the best I could have done. Having a longer look at you, I realized how truly perfect you are. Every feature of your body, your hair, your face, your legs, your chest, was just perfection. I rewound the tape to when you'd first come up into my line a few times. I couldn't help myself. My eyes were glued to the screen. After a few minutes of consideration, I popped out the tape and shoved it into my pocket. Then I drove home. I knew I wasn't allowed to. I could very well get fired for taking such actions, but I couldn't help myself. I had to have you with me at all times, even if it meant me losing my job. Abby, I love you. I love everything about you. I think about you constantly. Do you feel the same way about me, Abby? I just want us to be together forever. Right back soon, okay? Yours truly, Jay. Dear Abby, it's been 3 days and I still haven't gotten a reply. Why don't you want to talk to me? I'm still unsure if you got my last 2 letters. Please tell me if you have. So I got fired from my job. They found the missing tape. I got a call from the store owner, my boss, at 6 a.m. on Monday, and was told to come in immediately. They were having a mandatory all-staff meeting, and when I got there, all the staff were gathered around a small table, with the owner at the head of it. Once everyone had arrived, he told us that apparently there had been a minor robbery yesterday. They had about $200 worth of stuff taken from them, and the one tape that would have shown who the culprit was had been taken. Just my luck. He told us that no one was going to leave the room until someone confessed. After a few minutes, I finally gave up. I told him everything. I told him how I felt you and I had a connection of some kind. After explaining the whole story, the entire room was staring at me, wide-eyed. After I finished, I sat there in silence for several minutes. Suddenly, the owner broke the tension. Jay, you're fired. Get out of here now and don't come back. I did as I was told and got out of there as fast as I could. Stupid prick. He's always treating me like this. He's been on my case since the day I got the job. I swear he's just been waiting for me to do one little thing so he could justify firing me. One time I slip up, he finds out. Why doesn't he understand, though? Doesn't he get it? You and I are meant to be with each other. Any rational man could have understood. Anyone put in my situation would have done the same, right? I've been searching you up a lot lately. With no job, I have all the time in the world to spend learning about you. Do you know how much you can find out about someone with a first name and a town of residency? I found out your last name's Marriott. What a beautiful name. Abby Marriott. I can't help but say it aloud whenever I think about you. I also found out you're 24, and you only live a mile away from me. I drove down to your apartment complex today. It looks pretty nice. A lot nicer than where I live. I asked to see you multiple times, but I was told that you weren't there every time. I felt more and more discouraged each time, but I was determined to see you again. After a few hours of asking, I decided to stay back in the parking lot for a while, waiting for you to come back. And after many hours of waiting, you did. It was late at night, around 10, I think. I saw you pull up in your car and get out. I felt a sudden rush of warmth at seeing your face again. I know I have the security tape to look at, but it doesn't compare to seeing you in real life. I made sure to record it for later when I was at home, this time with a much higher quality camera. I wanted to capture as much detail as possible. I didn't know the next time I would see you, and the security tape wasn't enough for me anymore. I asked the woman at the front desk multiple times what your room number was, but she refused to tell me. She thought I was some sort of creep. You see, these people don't understand us. They don't understand how we feel about each other. I ended up waiting in the parking lot a lot longer until someone came out. After talking with him for a bit, he told me what your apartment number was. He didn't want to talk at first, but I made him. You'd be surprised what you can make people tell you when you're holding a knife to their chest. Oh, don't worry. I didn't hurt him too bad. But we can't have someone interfering with us. Don't you agree, Abby? I'm sick of all these people trying to keep us apart. I ended up watching you from the parking lot for a while. Once I found out your room number and how the rooms in your complex were organized, it wasn't hard to locate you. You should be more careful about shutting your blinds, you know. I was easily able to watch you from the parking lot. I can't get you out of my mind. All I do is watch that video I took of you over and over again. Abby, I want to be with you forever. I want to wake up next to you in bed every morning. I can't wait until next time I see you again. Love, Jay. Dear Abby, I have some really exciting news, Abby. I'm moving in with you. Aren't you excited? We can spend every hour of every day together. It'll be perfect. Let me explain. My job paid just enough so I could rent and pay for food every week. Because of this, I had little to no money in savings, nowhere near enough to last a long time. When you take that money flow away, it doesn't take much time until you have nothing left. I was able to get by for a few days, but just today I got evicted. This could actually be better than it would originally have thought. I wouldn't be surprised if that guy that gave me your room number had been able to contact the police by now. This way they won't be able to find me, and we get to spend all the time in the world together. It's perfect, isn't it? I made sure to bring all my tapes and photos I've taken of you, though, and my camera, of course. You should really tell whoever's managing your apartment complex to get better staff. I was able to get by security easily. I went up to your room and knocked on the door, but I didn't get an answer, so I decided to get in by other means. After scanning the footage I took from last night over a few times, I noticed that you have a ventilation shaft in the corner of your room. Not surprising, considering how hot it can get in the summer here. I figured there had to be some kind of maintenance hatch that I could get in through. After a few minutes of looking around, I found a door at the end of your hall that seemed to be some kind of staff room, and lucky there was a way into the vents through there. I crawled through them until I got to your room. It was pretty cramped and hard to move around in, but I managed. When I got through, I felt a rush of success. I figured since the lights were out, I couldn't see you, that you weren't home, but I'm patient. I scanned every part of your room, trying to memorize all the intricate details. Your scent overwhelmed me as I sat there. I had caught it briefly during the 2 times I saw you at the store, but never that strong. It was mesmerizing. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but it reminded me of something, almost like peaches. I sat there, hunched over for a few hours, though I've taught myself to be extremely patient. I can sit completely motionless for hours at a time, not moving a muscle. No one was going to notice me. Then you finally got home. I felt a wide smile on my face the second I heard the door open. And there you were, my love. Of course, you took no notice of my presence. The lights in your room seemed to be angled perfectly, so you couldn't see anything in the vent after the first few inches. I tried to contain my excitement, but I started breathing way too heavily. I tried to cover it as best I could, but it was hard. You suddenly looked right at my vent, and I went completely silent. After a few seconds, though, you seemed to lose interest. That made me smile. This was the perfect spot, it seemed. I could tell I had startled you, though. All throughout the night, you were turning over in your sleep to look at the vent. People seem to have a sense for when they're being watched. It can send them into complete panic. Don't try to fake it, Abby. I can tell when someone's awake and when someone's truly scared. When they're truly scared, sleep becomes impossible. Why are you so scared anyway? It's just me. Why would I scare you? You do love me, right? You know I love you. I'm looking forward to spending every day with you now, Abby. Write back if you can. Love, Jay. Dear Abby, I saw you wake up this morning. I didn't sleep a wink last night. You were too enthralling. Spent the whole night watching you. Couldn't help it. Anytime I tried to look away, my eyes seemed to be drawn back a few seconds later. You look even more amazing when you're asleep, you know. You'd be surprised how much you can learn from a person's personality by watching them sleep. I was tempted to get out of the vent and get a better view, but I resisted the urge. I couldn't have you figuring out I'm here. Not yet, at least. You seem to spend a lot of time in your bathroom in the morning. I assume you were taking a shower or putting on makeup. Why would you do that, Abby? Anything you could do to change the way you naturally look would only cover up your true beauty. Why would you want to do that? Don't you want the whole world to see what I see? You left not long after for work. At least, that's what I assumed. After careful consideration, I decided to leave the vent. I slid my hands through one of the slits and felt around for one of the bolts. The surface of the vent was very smooth, which made it easy to find what I was looking for. I grabbed onto one of them and twisted as hard as I could, and finally was able to pop it off. I did this with all the other bolts and finally removed the grating. First thing I did was go over to the bathroom. I quickly disposed of everything I could find that you could use to mask your face. That stuff disgusts me. This way, everyone will get to see how you truly are. I also found something else in there. Your hairbrush. I grabbed it and brought it close to my face to examine it. It was a dull blue with a very thick, rounded handle. But that wasn't what interested me. The hair. That's what made me interested. I took a good few minutes to pull every one of them that I could out and line them up on your counter. I counted them. I'd gotten 59. They pleased me greatly. I quickly scooped them up and put them in my pocket. Spent the rest of the day going through your stuff to learn more about you, your interests and such. I take it you're a big movie fan, Abby. I found your collection in the back of the closet. I have to say, it was quite impressive. I found something else in there that made me mad. A picture of you with another guy. It disgusted me, just looking at him, holding you like he owned you. I'm the only one that can have you, Abby. No one else. At about 8:30, I considered getting back in the vent, since that was usually about the time you got back from work. Then I had another idea. I looked at your bed. The blankets hung low enough to the floor that you couldn't see underneath the bed unless they were lifted up. I first screwed the vent grating back on and slowly slid under with a smile on my face, waiting for you to get home. When you finally came in, you looked completely pale, and I noticed someone else came in behind you. They were talking to you about hearing noises coming from your room throughout the day. I mentally yelled at myself. I would need to be more careful from now on. Going under the bed had been a good idea, though, since obviously your first thought was to check the vent. You thanked the person, and they left. Finally, you and I were alone. I sat there in the silence until you went to bed. It seemed to be an eternity before you did. I wanted to get a closer look at you tonight, and this was my chance. You got in bed and turned off the light. I was cautious, though. I waited for hours to make sure you were asleep, and when I was sure that you were, I slowly slid out from under the bed, and I saw you there. You looked absolutely stunning. Every curve of your body was perfect. Every little detail was beautiful. I was in awe just looking at you. I reached out my hand and started to stroke your face. It was soft like silk. I felt myself becoming excited. Your beauty was just overwhelming. I'm not ashamed of what happened next, but I'll save the details from your delicate sensibilities. Suddenly you seemed to turn and started to wake up. Horrified, I quickly slid back under the bed, trying to be as quiet as possible. A few seconds later, I saw you get out of bed and look around. I could sense your fear, even without looking at you. You should feel calm with me, Abby. I'll protect you. No one will ever touch you but me. I'd kill someone for you, Abby. I made sure to pay attention today. You didn't bring in my letters from yesterday or any mail at all. You must have not checked your mailbox. I'm going to change that, though. I'm going to leave this one on your desk tomorrow. Oh, I forgot to mention, I'm making something special for you. Check in your closet after you read this. Yours forever, Jay. Dear Abby, I spent more time today working on the surprise while you were at work. You're really going to love it. I've put a lot of work into it, you know. I spent a few hours today putting the finishing touches on it, and I think it's finally ready for you to see. You got home at about 8:30 again and saw the letter laying on your desk almost immediately. I started to smile as you opened it, waiting to see your reaction. It was really quite interesting watching your face. I could see all the different emotions and thoughts. You seemed to be confused at first, then shocked, then horrified. You started to shake violently, and I saw that you were crying. Do you not like me, Abby? Why were you crying? Don't you love me? Don't you love me, Abby? Everything after that was a blur. You looked over to the closet while sobbing. You seemed to be contemplating whether to open it or not. Instead, you ran past it and out the door. When you came back, you had all my letters in your hand and started going through them. At some point, you seemed to break down and curl up on the floor, tears still rolling down your face. I could tell you were desperately trying to say something, anything, but you were paralyzed with fear. After about 10 minutes, you took a look under the bed, in the vent, anywhere that I could be. You see, though, Abby, I'm smarter than that. I knew you'd look in those places. I found a better place after I finished your surprise. You'll never find me here. No one will. Isn't it great? I can watch you forever and ever, and there's nothing you or anyone else can do about it. You haven't found your surprise yet, though, Abby, and I could tell that you were still thinking about it. I saw you look over at the closet. I knew you wanted to open it, but at the same time, you were nervous. What was going to be in there? What would you find? This couldn't last forever, though. You and I both knew that. I watched you slowly walk over to the closet, fumbling with the handle, trying to get a firm grip on it. Suddenly, you flung the doors open and saw it. It was a scrapbook of me and you. I saw you flipping through the pages. You seemed to be shocked. Don't you like it, Abby? I got pictures of you and I when you weren't looking. Pictures of you sleeping. Pictures of you at your computer. I'd scattered the hairs I'd collected throughout, along with the pictures of couples together, of course, with our faces on them. I got that picture of you with the other guy and put it at the very back, except I didn't leave it like it normally was. I scratched his face off. I hate him so much. If I knew who he was, I'd hunt him down and make him suffer. Don't you get it, Abby? No one can have you but me. Me and you, we're meant for each other. No one else. I watched you sob for about 30 minutes and then get up and run out of the apartment. Shortly after, you came back with multiple policemen. That shocked me. Did you not like the surprise, Abby? Why would you bring these people into your room? They'll never find where I am, but if they did, it could ruin everything. All my work from the last few weeks would be for nothing. You wouldn't want that, right, Abby? I'm exhausted from today's work, and as much as I love you, I need to sleep, Abby. Have a good night. I love you. Jay. Dear Abby, do you see? Do you see what you've done, Abby? Do you see what you've done? I woke up at 8 a.m. to see you frantically packing your bags. I was confused at first, but then I understood. You were leaving me. You don't love me. You don't love me. How could you do this to me, Abby? You were the only thing I wanted in life. I had nothing else to live for. But when I first met you, I saw a shimmer of hope. I thought that I'd finally have a reason to wake up in the morning and go on with my life. And you went and threw that away. How could you do this to me, Abby? A few seconds after you left your room, I got out of my hiding spot and followed behind you. I saw you throw your bags into the back and then get in your car and drive away. I wasn't going to let you get away, though, Abby. No, I would never let that happen. I ran as fast as I could to your car and smashed out the windows and dragged you out. Did you really think you could get away from me, Abby? I had to hit you over the head to knock you out. You were making too much noise. Someone else, someone that doesn't understand, could have seen and ruined everything. Well, I had a plan for if you reacted like this, I drove out to the storage unit at the edge of town. I reserved a slot the day I decided to move in with you. I drove up and unlocked it. I grabbed you and carried you inside with me. It had only been a few minutes, so you were still unconscious. I made sure to check through your pockets to make sure you didn't have a phone with you. I sat you down at the very back of the small room, then I got in and lowered the door. I called the owner of the storage unit and told him that I had visited my lot the other day and forgot to lock it up. I asked him if he'd mind locking it for me. Of course he said he would, and I hung up. I threw my phone on the ground and stomped on it then, to make sure that it'd never work again. Shortly after, I heard the owner come up and lock the door. About an hour later, I saw you start to get up. I first heard a very faint grunt, and then I saw your legs start to move. Shortly after, you were fully awake. When you saw my face, you started to scream, which then subsided to a whine, then to a whimper. That's when you saw it. The one other thing in the room. My knife. It was obvious why it was there, and after a second or two of realization, you jumped up and grabbed it. I looked you dead in the eye and said, "Abby, I love you." Then I felt the searing pain of the knife being driven into my side. I felt it being pulled out and jabbed back in with great force. I could feel it go in each time like a fire burning a hole through my chest. I fell to the floor, laughing, while coughing up blood. I saw you back away, trembling, and sit back down in the corner. And now, as I sit here in a puddle of my own blood writing this, I wonder how you'll go out. Will you use the knife to take your own life? Will you let starvation get you? Either way, we'll be together in death, Abby. Together from the day I saw you till the day we both die, just like I wanted it. As you sit there, crying, I can tell you've come to the same realization. Abby, this is all I ever wanted, and for that, I have to say thank you. Love, Jay. At first, I ignored the dripping sound. I figured it was just raining, but the drip, drip, drip just wouldn't stop. No matter where I go, it's there. I've searched the whole house by now for the source, but no matter where I stand, it seems to be coming from over my head. I called a plumber. They should be here between 10 and 2. I'm really hoping for 10. Sound is driving me crazy. I try to distract myself with music, but no matter how far I turn the stereo up, the dripping is still there, incessant, just loud enough to form a backbeat. Drip, drip, drip. The plumber showed up. His eyes are red like he hasn't been sleeping. I explain the problem, and he goes to look. Yeah, I've been hearing the dripping for a couple of days now, the plumber says from under the sink. The leak clearly isn't there, but I don't say anything about it. He's the plumber, after all. It says so on his name tag, along with his name, which I'm certain he told me, but I must have forgot. The plumber keeps talking. I'm starting to think it's some kind of tinnitus because the dripping's following me around. This drip does that? I admit. I can't seem to narrow down where it is. Well, it isn't here, the plumber says, coming up from under the sink. His eyes look even redder now. I got a few more places to check, though. I follow him around the house. He weaves a bit drunkenly, and I start to wonder why his eyes are so red. Just my luck. I get a plumber who can't find the drip because he's hitting the bottle of scotch. Been getting a lot of these calls, the plumber slurs. You're lucky we could get you in. Seems like everyone has a leak they can't find these days. Just find it, I say. The tapping, dripping, dropping, clanking sound makes it hard to be patient. Maybe that's why the first thing I thought when the plumber dropped to the floor was, I'm supposed to be thankful for this alcoholic showing up. My second reaction is better, as it clicks with me that something's seriously wrong with this guy. I sink to the floor beside him and reach out. I call his name, which I only know because of the nameplate on his chest. I've forgotten his name even as I say it. He doesn't respond. Little pool of blood spreading on the floor from his nose. The next bit happens in a whirl. I call 911 and the paramedics show up. One of them has bloodshot eyes, and I find myself staring at that rather than at the corpse on the floor, because by then I know the plumber's dead. He hasn't so much as blinked since he fell to the floor. They take the body away and leave me with a little pool of blood slowly congealing on the tiles in my kitchen. When I head to get some towels to clean it up, I pass the bathroom mirror. My eyes look a little bloodshot too. Probably the dripping. Makes it hard to sleep at night. Though, maybe it's time to pick up a bottle of scotch myself. I'm not usually a heavy drinker, but something to help me relax a bit. The next day I'm sitting in my living room with the TV blaring in a doomed attempt to drown out the drip, drip, drip. A report comes on the news that catches my attention, mainly because I recognize the plumber's face. The familiar plumber's snapshot is alongside a few others on a screen cap. The details of the report are hard to concentrate on as the drip, drip, drip seems to wind in among the calmly stated facts from the news reporter. But even with that, I managed to get the basics. The people on screen, including my plumber, are all dead. That part makes sense. The rest doesn't seem to compute properly, even with my limited knowledge of biology and how the body works. The findings in his death don't feel right. When they brought my plumber to the hospital to examine him, there was no brain in his head. His entire skull was filled with blood. He was the first. Lucky me to have the first die in my kitchen and leave a pool of blood. The others are victims that have come in since his death. All dead now, according to the newscaster, with her perfect lipstick and her wide blue eyes. The CDC's been called in. The newscaster gives a list of warning signs of this new disease. I barely hear most of it because it sounds more like a practical joke than a real thing. The only thing I really pick up on is the dripping sound. The dripping in my own head wouldn't let me tune that factoid out. Apparently all the victims heard a dripping sound, which the doctor and the scientist are proposed was the sound of blood dripping into their empty skull, filling the place where their brain was supposed to be. I turned off the TV and headed upstairs to bed, despite it all just being the middle of the day. People can't live without brains. Even I know that. Despite being unreasonably exhausted, trying to sleep is hard with the dripping sound. I can't escape the repetitive noise. I shut my blinds, trying to blot out the sunshine outside, and climb back under the coverlet. I find myself mulling over the TV report. It can't be real. How could they even know that the people had empty skulls prior to the dripping? Were people coming in to report this to them before dying? And who would have even thought to look for such a thing? Outside the window, the sound of a siren screeches by, fading into a keening sound in the distance. By the time I finally drift off to sleep, I've convinced myself that I imagine the entire report. I dream that I'm trying to find a leak in an old basement that smells like mold and copper. I find blood dripping down the wall instead, and realize I'm standing in a puddle of it. By the time I get back to the basement stairs, it's up to my knees. Morning comes, and the dripping sounds louder, more like the plop of water in a full bathtub than droplets hitting the porcelain. Like my brain's filling up. Except that thought comes directly from the news report that I must have dreamed. I go downstairs and turn the TV on again to make breakfast. There's a dried pool of blood in the kitchen floor. I should have cleaned that up. I'm gearing up to do that as I eat some dry toast for breakfast. But the news comes on and distracts me. Pictures of the local hospital and a new set of faces fill the screen. I see a number, but I don't recall the death total a moment later. Must be hard to remember things without a brain, I tell myself. I don't listen to the newscaster's report this time. Instead, I pick up my smartphone and do my own research. The report I heard was real, or at least the report really happened. Lots of people are calling the disease made up and falsified, but I noticed that everyone from where I lived is scared. There are more reports of deaths, wives telling what happened to their husbands, children saying what happened to their parents, and every story starts with that dripping that no one else can hear. I do some research on the doctors who are putting in this insane claim. They were all respectable before this, and their reports still chill me in a way I don't expect because all of them are saying exactly what I thought. This shouldn't be possible. People can't live without brains, but they are. That makes me study the report carefully, searching for the underlying fact, even if those facts contradict logic. The body count's up in the hundreds now. Didn't take long. The disease seems like it takes about 4 to 5 days in total. Now I'm sure of what the sound in my head is. It's a drip, slow and steady, of blood into my empty skull, filling the space left vacant. Drip, drip, drip. No matter how much I study the report, there's no explanation for this phenomenon, nor why the people die when the empty space is full. But they do, and by inference, that means I will too, unless I can figure out a way around my looming fate. I clean up the dried blood on my kitchen floor, overflow from the plumber's brain. He should have drained it beforehand and brought himself some time. How full is my skull? I'm 3 days into this awful dripping. I go out to my car and consider driving away, but the dripping would just follow me. When I go back inside, I'm thankful that I didn't leave. The TV tells me that the borders of the city have been closed. We're all in full quarantine for the rest of the world. Another fact sneaks in to frighten me. The death toll is up in the thousands now. And that's just the ones that have been reported and tallied. There are only 2 things the city's doing now: dripping and dropping dead. That strikes me as funny, and I laugh. I can see my reflection in the kitchen window as night falls. My eyes are a horrid shade of red. I wouldn't mind some scotch, but pretty sure that even if there were places open out there, they wouldn't serve me. No one seems to know if this is contagious, but no one's taking any chances. We don't know what the cause of this plague is, but the quarantine has people thinking that it can be contained. That means that we're spreading it somehow. No scotch in the house. I lock all my doors and bar the windows as night deepens. There are bodies in the street. I can't find a death toll online anymore. No one's doing anything akin to scientific research. I find several places where people outside the city are discussing what's happening. I try to leave comments, but my fingers don't seem to want to type anything sane. I can locate a few like me, typing similar comments. All we talk about is the dripping. The drip, drip, drip. But it started to sound like a ticking sound to me. After all, that drip is my life, ticking back to 0. In the middle of the night, I hear a gunshot fired, then another. Someone runs by outside my house, and I'm pleased that they don't fall down and die. There's enough corpses outside my house. When I survive this, I don't want these bodies to be my responsibility. No one out there is going to help me, not those talking about the disease from their safe, unaffected cities, and certainly not the dwindling population of the city around me. I stare at my kitchen floor and think about the plumber. Ending up like him is hardly appealing, so I won't. His problem, I decide, was that he didn't have the information I do. He didn't know what was happening to him, so he couldn't address it. He didn't know that he didn't have a brain in his skull, and it was slowly filling up. My leg up is that I know these things. I wonder how we lost our brains and if we can get them back. But those are facts that I don't have. The people who came after me may have them, but I have to make do with what I know. And what I know is that my skull is filling up with blood, and I'll die. A smile spread across my face. I feel it stretching unused muscles. All I have to do in order to not die is not let my skull fill up. I head into the garage and dig in the tools there. I find my drill and bring it inside. Safety first. I wash and sanitize the bit, then I leave my sink faucet on. I figure I can wash and rinse the thing as I go in if it becomes necessary. Good thing I know my sink doesn't leak. I giggle a little. I'm getting silly. It's all the dripping, I guess. I tell myself it's hard to focus with the dripping, and maybe, just maybe, it's hard to think clearly with no brain. The best place to go in, I decide, is the dead center of the skull. I don't need to worry about hitting my brain, after all. I plug the drill in and put the bit where it belongs. I picture the blood coming out of the plumber's nose. Obviously, that doesn't work as a drain before death, but I'm smart enough to create my own drain. My head would never fill up. Nope, I'll just let that pesky dripping blood drain out the front. The back might have been a better choice. Not to mess up my face, but I can't properly reach back there. Forehead it is, I guess. I turn the drill on and press it to my forehead. You'd think it'd hurt a lot, but the truth is, it doesn't hurt all that much at all. After the first surprise jolt, it's more like a toothache. Nasty, but localized. And the knowledge it would be over soon kept me going. The drill bit pops through the other side of my skull. I feel it because the resistance is gone, and the drill just slides forward. I pull it out and tipped my head over the sink, letting the blood drain out and get washed away by the flow of water. I wonder who else has thought of this as I clean up bone fragments and blood from the kitchen. Then I wander into my living room. I don't turn on the TV. I can't hear it over the dripping anymore. People are screaming outside. I feel sorry for them. I figured it out. I'm safe, but they're still out there, in the worst of it. I go to the window and look out, peeling back the curtain. The world is fresh and new, vital. Looks redder than it did before. It's actually a little hard to see. Oh, I should have thought of that. The blood is draining into my eyes. Not dripping now, but there's a lot of red, more than the tiny drips could account for. Can't see anything through the blood drip, dripping over my eyes. She was little once, small in stature, with a mighty soul. She danced, twirled and jumped, swung and sang. There was fire in her eyes. She wore no shoes on her feet. Golden hair shimmered as she swayed. The sun rays kissed her freckled cheeks. A soft summer breeze wrapped all around her, tickling her skin, enveloping her. She cherished Mother Nature's sweet embrace, for she knew no other. Wrapped in its infinite hum, she found solace. She read books meant for much older people, played piano by ear, also guitar, sang songs about blue skies and black birds, and at 4 o'clock every day after his work, she climbed up onto her father's knee, shared a sandwich from his lunchbox, smelled his oily, smoky daddy smell. He read to her from the paper, like familiar old friends. The words jumped out at her. She knew them and spoke their name out loud excitedly, as if to greet them. Her mummy rolled her eyes and shushed her chatterbox mouth. Her father said nothing. She snuck her bag full of books and old annuals, only 3 years old, spoke words she shouldn't know, but somehow did. She used words so eloquently, so confidently, conversed with adults, preferably, debating and challenging the unjust nonsense they spouted to their children. Questions, questions, questions. Always questions, seeking more information, offering unwanted opinions, a perpetual quest for details, explanations, justifications. There was no Google then, no Alexa, no technological oracle with a bottomless well of wisdom to draw from. The girl was most often shoved away in annoyance, immediately shushed by her mother to be quiet, because she sounded not right in her head. She told them anyway. Do you know rivers on maps, circulatory systems in the biology books at school, leaves, dragonfly wings, tree branches, roots, fish fins, veins on Granny's hands, tiny ripples on the sand as the tide went out. All the same, she would explain. Why are we made all the same? Her mother shut her away in her den, under the stairs, in the dark. Her father said nothing, did nothing, but later snuck her a torch and a bag full of books called encyclopedias. They were heavy. They hummed strongly, and the hum felt, tasted, smelled strange, like copper and rot, like death had touched them. Books about every single thing ever, even books about how Mother Nature made the weather. The girl would ask her books questions and spoke out loud to them, thanking them for their help, arranging them carefully, offering hours of rapacious ritual for fear of angering them if their placement was not exact. I don't want my books to get angry. The girl got promptly shushed. You're not right. Why do you always do this? Refusing to bow down and accept blame and punishment for crimes that were never hers, pointing out where things went wrong, foretelling where things would eventually go wrong. She saw patterns everywhere. They made her tummy lurch and her head spin when her opinions came true. Effusively, the girl exclaimed, "See? See?" Only to be left with deep black and blue reminders of her defiance and disrespect, dappling her tiny body. Her joints burned and ached, skin burning fiercely, the old taste of 2 pence on her tongue. She refused to cower. She refused to comply. She refused to confess. Her steadfast determination to mask her pain, her deadpan face, pale as ivory, wide accusatory eyes locked on her attacker, never wavering, and with fearless courage she gazed deep into the abyss, and the abyss gazed back at her, hateful, spiteful, accusing, stripping back the layers of pain, purple, painful, stepping stones, mapping the frenzied journey of a mother's rage. And in the early hours, her mother would wake her, and whilst in a haze of half-sleep and not quiet, her mother would cry noisily, that same way, woo, 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 a banshee's cry. She would say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. over and over and over. The girl, bewildered, heart aching, herself splitting, core cracking in confusion, would pat and rub her mother's back and tell her she was a good mummy, not a bad mummy. As her mother hugged her, she felt long nails rake her back and dig into her shoulder. The girl smiled contently, for pain was all she knew of human love, thinking all mothers must all love this way. She accepted it eagerly. She was only 4, only on earth 4 summers, 4 winters, 48 moons old, only 4, with a lion's heart and a lion's roar. She walked around like she owned the whole world, fearless, courageous, tempestuous, a tsunami of emotions, and she captivated hearts, rooms. All who saw her smiled a little wider. Her gift of laughter, she lit up the room, and people remarked upon how beautiful she was, inside and out. If only you could bottle her, you'd make a fortune. With her gentle green-blue eyes, ever-changing, multifaceted orbs of purity, honesty, loyalty, respect. She exuded unconditional love, yet there were no friends around her to bless her life in the playful way that friends do. Small, usual flecks of amber dotted within. She gazed into your very soul, weighed you up, sussed you out. Triage, red, amber, green. She always hit the nail right on the head. She saw the future, predicted which way cars would turn, guessing how the dice would fall, giggling, guessing shapes. What card was then? She saw patterns flash in her mind, like an architect unfolding intricately designed blueprints and complex maps of stars and planets, galaxies far, far beyond what was already known. In restless daydreams, she saw hum vibrating within auras. She saw strands of time entwined like rope, so close together, each invisible to the other, each playing out the same scenario. Hundreds of me's, hundreds of you's, hundreds of them's. Lightning quick, quicker than her heartbeat, twice as quick. Mother would find her in the garden, laid on her back, 1,000-yard stare, mouth agape, a silent scream, hands splayed, locked in place, eyes wide and unblinking, flickering ever so slightly, as information engulfed her mind. Too much, too much. She felt everything. She felt nothing. Far, far away. She knew. She always knew. She knew when the rain would come. She knew when the ewes would drop their lambs. Worked alongside the shepherds during the lambing time, day or night, wind, rain, snow. She knelt down in the hay to lay a little hand on swollen bellies, feeling the hum of new life inside, knowing when, knowing sadly when not. She knew in her heart when spring was here. She knew when people were sad, or in pain, or poorly. She could smell poorly, like plastic burning, sweet, acrid. She knew jealousy. She knew resentment. She knew of death, had felt its hum, and found it to be most patient, gentle, fair, compassionate, very kind. The girl did not understand why humans feared him so and avoided him at all cost. Many, many times she hoped that death would take her. As the hungry monsters fell upon her, feasting greedily upon her childhood, consuming her, afterwards she lay alone, used up, cast aside, raw, bloody, sticky with shame. She would summon death with a silent scream. It heard her call its name, but would only linger on the threshold of her bedroom door. Shadows gathered in the corners. She knew death wanted her, yet it hesitated, whispering, "Not yet, child, not yet." As if her secret routines and rituals, repeated for hours, kept him at bay like it did the Shadow Man. The girl heard him knock politely at first. 3 taps, 7 seconds. 3 taps, 7 seconds. 3 taps, 7 seconds. Then a claw in a soundless frenzy at her bedroom door, opening for hours, spitting and frothing with rage as her invisible barrier held fast. A desperate attempt to build a force field, some place of safety, a fortress of protection around what was left of her. "You were just dreaming." Her father said it softly, yet he gave her a tiny little radio to put under her pillow at night that smelled funny and nailed a special horseshoe above her bedroom door, and it helped. She often knew when people were dying and would tell them, "Don't be scared. It's okay. It really is okay. You'll feel so much better. You won't feel sad. You won't miss anyone or worry." She knew the silent suffering of others. She would sing for them her nightingale song, her soft, shimmering hair, long like spun gold, do silly things that made them laugh, and, swathed in shadows, wrapped within the illusion of trust, biding their time, patient, oh, so very, very patient, stalking delicious prey, they drank her in, bathed in her light, and wanted more. All that was beautiful in her world fell away, and the real monsters came to play. They came first with gentle hands, played games, made no demands. Then gentle hands became rough and sore, turned a beautiful soul to a broken whore. And she knew, like she always knew, that her mother, lips curled in a rictus grin, eyes narrowed, had invited them in, and sat like a queen on her throne, looking down from afar, from her front row seat, was complicit in her eventual and complete obliteration. As the autumn leaves fell without a sound, her hopes, her dreams, her soul, her very self, fell with them. Shards of her still littered the ground. A winter invaded the land. Ground icy, unyielding, unforgiving, hard, cold. She felt her heart hardening, cracking, breaking, and she welcomed the rough hands, welcomed the pain it caused through the fibers of her being. If her pain was audible, it would sound like a badly played violin, carving shards from her very soul. Fragile fragments littered her mind as it cut her into pieces. The girl invited it, embraced it, accepted it. All she was All she had been, all she might ever be, was shrouded in gray mists, tied tight with ribbons of red pain, and stored away in the deepest, furthest recesses of her core. And new Bevs came, each their own, each with purpose to protect at all cost, even if the cost was great, as sadly it often was. Protect the core, gather up, sweep and scoop the shattered shards of what remains, and try over and over to build a person that might feel and live and love. Decades later, a broken old woman with the eyes of a young girl sat in a mental health facility, awaiting trauma processing therapy. The shadows in her mind held sway in anticipation, licking its lips, gnashing its teeth, hungry for the delicious taste of pain. And, long forgotten by the girl, in the furthest recesses of her mind, was the very epitome of Pandora's box. In a leather-bound book named Suffering, her childhood sat, waiting. I'm shaking as I write this. I've thought about calling the police, but I haven't figured out if I'm losing my mind or if my entire family has lost theirs. Maybe I'll wake up soon and this will all be a terrible nightmare. For context, I'm an only child and the only grandchild of my last living grandmother. A couple of weeks ago, while I was at work, I received a phone call from my mom informing me that my grandmother had fallen in her kitchen. Mom said that my Uncle Lou was with her and already in the ambulance. Paramedics suspected she had a fractured hip and somehow had sliced open her foot. She was sedated due to the pain, but was otherwise responsive and fine. I immediately asked if I should meet them at the hospital, but Mom said, No, don't leave work. We'll update you once we know more. So, I waited. I love my grandma, but she's probably the most stubborn woman I've ever met. She has a home remedy for just about anything, and loathed seeing a doctor. So I was sure that she wouldn't be fun to deal with from the confines of a hospital bed. It doesn't help that Grandma absolutely refuses to use a walker or a cane, despite her debilitating age, and won't leave the house to live in a nursing home. 6 months ago, Uncle Lou moved in with her to help out. Not that he said it out loud, but I've always suspected he did it more for free rent, though. With nothing else to do, I sat at work, distracted, and waiting for a phone call from Mom with news. The call didn't come through until long after I'd gotten home and was brushing my teeth for bed. Apparently, Grandma was awake now and doing fine. She would need surgery for the broken hip, but they were able to get the laceration on her foot stitched up and bandaged. I asked to speak to her, so Mom held the phone up to Grandma's ear, and I told her that I loved her and I'd come see her once she was discharged. The hospital only allowed 2 visitors, and Mom and Uncle Lou refused to leave her side. "Hi, honey," Grandma said through the receiver. "I'm okay, but they won't let me leave." My mom's voice in the background exasperatedly explained that she needed surgery. "So they tell me. I'm fine, Anna. Come see me when I get home and we can play cards." I smiled, promising to visit, and said goodbye. She was discharged the following week and sent home. The hip replacement was successful, but she developed a nasty infection on her foot. Between the 2 ailments, Grandma was confined to her bed. Once she was comfortable at home, Mom gave me the okay to come over, so I made some chicken and dumpling soup and sat in a chair beside her bed while Mom spoon-fed Grandma. "There you go, Mom," my mom encouraged as Grandma sipped the broth off the spoon. I could tell that Grandma was wildly out of it. I had been expecting an earful about having to use a bedpan due to the cocktail of narcotics and antibiotics, but she merely grumbled in annoyance at Mom and Lou's constant hovering. For what it was, she seemed in good spirits, if not exceptionally tired. After about 2 hours of small talk and a soup mishap, I got up to leave. Mom saw me to the door. "She'll be fine, Anna. Lou and I are taking care of everything. Don't worry." I left feeling optimistic that my grandma would be back to her old Spitfire self relatively soon. But that visit with the soup was over 2 weeks ago now. Not long after, Mom took a leave of absence from work and holed up in Grandma's house with Uncle Lou. Each time I called, Mom gave a new excuse as to why I shouldn't visit. Risk of infection, flu season, fatigue, bowel issues, you name it. At first, I accepted these excuses at face value. They seem legit, but I can't even get Mom to put Grandma on the phone anymore. I made more soup yesterday and dropped it off, but Uncle Lou met me at the door and said it wasn't a good time, but he'd make sure she got it. "And we always let her know when you come to call," he assured. I noticed that there was an intense floral and antiseptic smell coming from the doorway. "Your mom won't stop cleaning," he explained. Frustrated, I called and complained to my father on my way home, but he defended Mom like always. "She's always been like that. They're extremely close, your mom and your grandma. And Lou, well, this just seems like classic Lou. You know, this is the first time they've really had to face the reality of their mother's age. They're just protective and scared to lose her." I figured he was right and hung up the phone feeling a little less unsettled. On Grandma's 89th birthday, however, I decided I wasn't going to take no for an answer. I would go over there and give her the present I had purchased for her, a new thriller by her favorite author. I arrived at the house in late afternoon and noticed all the blinds were closed. Being that it was a warm spring day, it was common for Grandma to have all the windows and drapes open, letting in both the sunlight and the fresh air. I knocked twice on the front door, but no one came. I knocked again with no answer. I tried the door, but it was locked. I paused for a moment, considering that maybe no one was home. Maybe Grandma had a follow-up with her surgeon. But both cars were in the driveway, so I knocked again, louder this time. The door opened a crack, and a foul odor filtered out, nearly choking me. "Mom?" I exclaimed, when her face appeared on the other side of the door. "What's that smell?" Seeing it was only me, she opened the door another inch. The infection's gotten worse, but we're monitoring it." "Should I call an ambulance?" I asked in a panic, pulling my cell phone out. No, Ann," she quickly reassured me. We have it handled. I stopped by and picked up refills on her antibiotics earlier, and we've been on the phone with her surgeon." Relieved, I took a deep breath, but the smell was so overpowering. "Mom, that smells ungodly. Why don't you open the windows?" We tried, but she's got so cold." Mom shrugged and didn't move. "Can I come in?" I asked, attempting to look over her shoulder into the dim house. I really didn't want to go inside due to the smell, but if Grandma wasn't doing well, I wanted to see her. "I don't think it's a good idea." "Where's Uncle Lou?" "Upstairs in his room." Her voice was reassuring, but the smell turned me aside. Surely a smell like that could only mean bad things. I pushed the door open and Mom protested. Just come back another day when she's feeling better. I promise you that Lou and I have this under control." In the kitchen, the odor was strong, but mixed with the smell of bleach. I couldn't tell if that made it better or worse. "At least let me see her and give her birthday present." Mom looked down to see the wrapped gift in her hand. "Of course," she said. "Gosh, I'm sorry. I've been so preoccupied. I'm sure she'll love it." At that moment, Uncle Lou came trotting down the stairs and smiled at me. "Anna, Mom will be so happy you're here." I looked at my mother incredulously. She was staring at her feet. What was going on? Uncle Lou continued down the hall, and I could hear him as he opened the door to Grandma's bedroom. "Mom, you have a visitor for your birthday." The smell of the house was searing my nostrils, but I wasn't going to let Grandma know I was repulsed by it. Mom led me down the hall to Grandma's bedroom, instructing me along the way to put on a brave face. I plastered on a smile as I turned the corner into the room. Grandma was sitting up in bed, and Uncle Lou had taken a seat on the mattress beside her. His body obscured most of the view, but I could see her feet were stuck out from under the quilt. The toes on her right foot were black with crumbling toenails and festering sores. The sheets under her heels were stained yellow from dried pus. Lou was prattling on to her, but Grandma wasn't responding. "Isn't it nice for Anna to come and see you on your birthday, Mom? Goodness knows you've been through a lot this month. She got you a present." He turned expectantly to me, his profile just enough to reveal Grandma's form where she sat up against the pillows. I'll try to explain the horror I witnessed, but I know that words will never do it justice. My stomach flipped and I froze. Grandma's dull, lifeless eyes stared straight ahead at the wall, unblinking and glazed over. Her eyelids were crusty, and her jaw hung widely agape with sagging lips, revealing a gray fuzz that had begun to coat her tongue. Uncle Lou patted her leg while Mom hastily pulled the quilt back up over her feet. I barely heard as Lou exclaimed how cold she'd been from the infection. He picked up a tissue from the box on the nightstand and began dabbing at the corners of her mouth. "She doesn't talk much due to heavy sedation," he explained. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the pallid gray skin on Grandma's face and how it was starting to sag in ways that had nothing to do with her age. Flies buzzed overhead, and Mom picked up the fly swatter and began swatting them away. "Goddamn flies," she mumbled. "They won't leave her alone." One of the flies circled Grandma's face and landed in her open maw. Uncle Lou merely shooed it away. "She's been sleeping sitting up like this for the past week or so," Mom explained, patting Grandma's now covered feet. "The pain is just too much for her to lay down. We tried, but her muscles spasm and she can't move." My knees were shaking and I could all but back out of the room, reaching for and pressing myself against the opposite wall. Vomit crept up the back of my throat. "It's okay, Anna," Uncle Lou said from inside the room. "I know it's hard to see her in such a state, but that's why your mom and I are taking care of her. We agreed we wouldn't let her go back to the hospital. They've already messed up so much of her care. You saw her foot and what the doctors did to it." "How a hospital could let gangrene go unnoticed is beyond me," Mom agreed. "We've been sponge bathing her regularly, airing her feet and changing her bandages. It seemed to be helping, right, Mom?" she asked, squeezing Grandma's ankle. I tried to put my head between my knees, but the smell was so overpowering. Mom stepped out in the hallway and touched my shoulder. "Oh, Anna, I'm sorry. This is why I didn't want you to come over. The gangrene smell is hard to tolerate. I didn't want you to have to see her like this." Not knowing what else to do, I pulled her into the kitchen and said in the most steady voice I could manage, "Mom, why didn't you tell me that Grandma had passed?" Mom's face didn't change. She just looked at me. "What are you talking about, Ann? She's right there. You saw her." "Yeah, I did see her," I agreed, pointing at the bedroom door where the smell was so strong I had nearly passed out. "But Grandma is dead, Mom. You know that, right? She has very obviously passed away." Mom's eyebrows narrowed and she pursed her lips. "Listen, Ann, I get that it's hard for you. Hell, it's hard for all of us, but if you're saying this just to hurt me, it's not going to work. Stop being a brat. Your father is on his way over with a birthday cake." The room began to spin, and I needed to get out of that house immediately. I tossed the present on the kitchen table and grabbed my bag, fleeing out of the kitchen door and into the car where I took a deep breath of fresh air. I could see Mom at the large bay window looking out at me. She looked angry and upset, but I quickly turned and walked away. I pounded the steering wheel, yelling obscenities. Other than an open casket funeral, I had never seen a dead body before, let alone one that had so clearly been dead for weeks. But Grandma was undoubtedly dead, and my mother and uncle were staying in that house with her corpse, washing it and feeding it and talking to it like nothing had changed. I threw open the car door and vomited all over Grandma's neglected shrubs. By the time the dry heaves kicked in, Dad's car pulled up in the driveway. "Hey, sweetheart," he said as he opened the car door, seeing me kneeling in the grass. "Are you all right? Your mom called and told me you were quite upset." "Dad, she's dead," I choked out at the house. "Who's dead?" he asked, his voice worried. "Grandma. Grandma's dead. Mom and Lou, they're just sitting in there with her body." "Anna, calm down. Your mom mentioned you were hysterical and talking nonsense." "Talking nonsense? What are you saying?" I choked out. "Go look, Dad. I swear you'll see. She's dead, and Mom and Lou have lost their minds." "All right," he said, holding up his arms in surrender. "Let me grab the cake, and I'll go inside and see what's going on. Just stay here, okay?" I collapsed back in the front seat of my car, blasting the AC in an attempt to flush the smell of rotten flesh out of my nose. It felt like an hour before the front door opened again, and Dad calmly walked over to the driver's side window. "Hi, Anna Bear," he said cautiously. "Did you see her, Dad? You saw her, right?" "Shh, Anna," he said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Calm down. Yes, I saw her, and she's very sick, but otherwise alive. Your mom and Lou are taking good care of her." "What?" I clearly screamed. "Come inside," Dad said, going for the door handle. I quickly locked the door. Dad threw up his hands in frustration. "Just come inside, Anna. Uncle Lou is getting Grandma into her wheelchair, and we're all going to have some cake." He glanced up at the front window of the house. "Ah, see? There she is." I glanced up to see my grandmother's face at the window, her dead eyes looking blankly out the front yard. Rigor mortis had made it so her body couldn't sit in the wheelchair just right. Even from a distance and through a pane of glass, I could see death in her eyes and the shocking gape of her mouth. Her face looked even more twisted now, as if she'd taken her last breath in a tremendous amount of pain. But what made me scream in abject terror was that her cloudy pupils seemed to turn ever so slightly towards me. I threw the car into drive and sped out of the driveway, ignoring the shouts of my father and Uncle Lou as he burst out the front door. I didn't dare go home, where I was sure my father would follow. Were they right? Was she actually alive? It's not like I checked for a pulse or air in her lungs before I took off. I didn't touch her at all. Could it be me then? Was I the one having a nervous breakdown? I don't know what to do now. I'm absolutely terrified. Worst of all, when I close my eyes, all I see is my grandmother's rotting face. The snow stopped falling a few hours ago. What was once an overcrowded city is now a frozen wasteland. You can hardly distinguish the houses between them. The roofs are barely visible above the snow accumulating during the last month. The trees have already succumbed to the cold and the weight of the ice, while the animals have taken refuge with the humans inside houses and other buildings. The wild animals? I don't know. I never really thought about them. Some must have died already, I suppose. Others must be having a great time, like the polar bears. Or maybe these temperatures are too low even for them, and the temperature keeps falling. Nobody knows when it'll stop, or if it's even reversible. Nobody knows exactly how the whole world ended up this way. Of course, we all know the why, but not the how, because everything happened in such a strange way that nobody understands. All the physicists in the world tried to explain it, to solve it, but they couldn't. Now the entire population of Earth is in an underground bunker, those that have been built in case of nuclear war. They're the only places with enough insulation to resist low temperatures, at least for a while. Nobody knows exactly how much will survive. Everything will depend on the amount of provisions that each of us saved. I have enough for several years, of course. I wasn't going to build an anti-nuclear bunker and then not fuel it. The food may last me several decades, but I'm sure I can survive at least 5 years. Perhaps in that time the Earth will warm up again, or the cold will kill me. Anyway, I guess the food will do. In addition, I have the perfect entertainment set, which is also not dependent on the internet, because the internet no longer works. It's been down for several weeks. Same with telephone communication, TVs, and even the radio. which was the last to fall, just 2 decades ago. Everyone knows that if the radios stop working, it's only a matter of time before the temperature would drop so low that it would cause flash freezing. The last words heard were, "Please, survive." I've no idea who said them. The president maybe, or some scientist trying to encourage himself or others, probably hoping that given the time they have, they'll find some resolution. It was as if he was saying, "Please survive," so someone is there to see that we succeeded. Or, "Please survive so that we don't take the blame for humanity's extinction." The reality is, it really was the fault of the scientists. Or at least, that's what we believe. Because once again, nobody knows exactly what happened. Teleportation. That was the great invention that they were testing. The first teleportation machine in history. The theory was perfect. The machine had been built following the instructions to the letter. Everything had been checked at least 10 times. The task was, in theory, simple. Transporting a cardboard box from point A to point B. At both points, one of the machine halves was located, the transmitter and the receiver. The distance wasn't very far, barely 2 meters. It was the first attempt, after all. They couldn't ask much of it. The cardboard box was placed on the transmitter, right in the middle of the small circular platform that made it up. A protective bubble was placed on top of the box and fitted perfectly into the platform. On the other side, the receiver was exactly the same, except that at the moment it was empty, of course. They activated the mechanism, and instantly the machine began to work. It first undid the box, little by little, witnesses saying it looked a bit like a 3D printer in reverse. Every single atom in the cardboard box was disengaged, allowing the box to enter the proper liminal state to be carried through the air, across the room, and captured by the receptacle, where it would be rebuilt. The problem was that once the box disappeared, it didn't reappear. Scientists, technicians, engineers reviewed their equations and plans, but found no errors. Both machines were perfect, but no matter what they did, the box wouldn't come back. Nobody knows how long it took from that first test until everything went really wrong. None of those involved in the project said anything, no matter how hard they were pressed. The most they could say was that they had no idea what had happened. At this point, everyone believed them. Nobody had a clue, but at the time, no one did. And they were accused of being the horsemen of the apocalypse. The thing is, a month ago, the cardboard box reappeared. The problem was that it didn't appear on the receiver of the teleporter machine. It didn't even show up in the room they were experimenting with. No, the box appeared in outer space, floating. And it didn't end there. The first one was followed by more and more. The boxes continued to appear throughout space, around the planet, around the moons, even around the sun. The satellites were blocked because the cardboard didn't allow the waves to pass. That's when the internet went down, and everyone really started freaking out. When were they going to upload the videos of what was happening? Where did they go to fight with strangers? Who would they tell their conspiracy theories to? Television was the next thing to fall. Everything was desperate. Everyone was desperate, except for the owners of the newspaper, who were able to put the old printing presses back in operation. The world seemed to go back to the beginning of the 20th century, when only paper newspapers and radios existed. Antique dealers made money, selling old radio sets that had been forgotten for decades. The last image NASA received from the space telescope was so strange and terrifying that no one knew what to say. Not even the news headlines were able to come up with a sensational phrase. The reality was worse than anything they could exaggerate. Space was filled with cardboard boxes. Literally. The image from the satellite had shown NASA that the boxes were not only around the Earth, but also around all the objects in the universe. Planets, stars, even galaxies. It was as if all the empty space in the universe had been replaced with cardboard boxes. All because an experiment had went wrong. In the first week, the sky seemed to be on fire. Looking up, large flares could be seen streaking across the sky, caused by the boxes crashing into Earth's atmosphere and burning up in the process. And since the boxes were everywhere,
The whole sky was constantly crossed by flames. Eventually the flames stopped, and darkness engulfed everything. The boxes had blocked out the sunlight. That's when the temperature started to drop. The snow soon appeared, covering everything. It wasn't long until the entire population had to take refuge, and the temperature just kept dropping. No one knew what the limit would be, just as no one knew whether it would be reversible or how long we would survive. For my part, I didn't have much hope. I was never someone who understood much about science, but I'm sure that if the boxes were still up there, it'll all be over soon. I'm not even sure if all the supplies I have will do any good. The bunker, after all, was built to survive a nuclear disaster, not a permanent winter. The walls are thick and well insulated, but I can already feel the cold coming in. I have a stove, but only one, because I never thought it would be so cold. It was never so cold here where I live, and no one ever told me to worry about that. I should have grabbed another one before I went in, but all I got were blankets. All the ones that were in my house, which weren't many either. I already have one around my body, because I started shivering just now. I'm next to the stove. I'm wearing the thickest jacket I have, but the cold seems to be coming in. It's been almost 3 days since I got into the bunker. The radio is static, and I don't even have the heart to watch movies. I'm afraid I'll freeze while doing it without realizing it. I have a cup of hot coffee in my hand. I left the kitchen on to heat the environment a little more, but I know I'm going to have to turn it off soon because the bunker is hermetic, and although it has an air purification system, I can get poisoned by combustion gases. That's something they always told me when I built it, that I had to be careful with the kitchen. I wonder what will be less painful, death by cold or death by gas poisoning. If the internet still existed, I'd look it up, although I really don't know if I want to know the answer. I get up, dragging the blanket behind me, and finish turning off the stove. It's better to be cautious. I go back to my place by the stove and grab my cup of coffee. It helped warm me up a bit, but not too much because it cooled down pretty quickly. The last sip I take seems to be taken from the fridge. This damn bunker has turned into an ice cream parlor. I bet if I turned off the refrigeration that I have, everything would stay the same. And that makes me wonder, how long will it be until the power goes out? Because I'm sure that the cables coming from the power plant must already be having problems. I know some areas that have been under blackout. Here, luckily, nothing's happened yet. I hope it lasts a long time. I don't want to imagine what it'll be like to be cold and in the dark on top of that. Well, it would be almost like being outside, I guess. Outside with the dark sky, no stars, no sun, without even being able to see the light of the moon. Just cardboard boxes, which are not even visible from here. We only know they're there because of the flares and the photos. Damn teleportation. Nobody needed it. Why did they have to invent it? It's useless. It wouldn't solve anything. Why? I guess it's nobody's fault, really. No one could have imagined that the experiment would go so wrong. After all, in whose head could something like this bring about the end of the world? I wrap myself in another blanket. I don't know if it's really colder or I'm just imagining it. I look at the clock and see that it's already night, but I can't sleep. I don't want to risk falling asleep and never waking up. Damn, it's really cold here, I whisper to myself, to no one in particular, to the universe.